Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Today, our portion is called Vayigash, and he approached. The concept of Mashiach, or Messiah, was developed by our sages over a period of time. And in Parashat Vayigash, the two main characters, Joseph and Judah, point to two types of Messiah. Mashiach ben Joseph, the suffering Messiah, and Mashiach ben David, the conquering Messiah. They were not explicitly written about in the scriptures, but they emerged around 300 BC in between the Tanakh and the Messianic writings during the age of the apocryphal writings. They say a hero would appear, most likely as a king or a priest from the tribes of Judah or Joseph. Now, in this portion, it looks like Joseph is the conquering Messiah, while Judah is a suffering servant who bows before Joseph, calling him my Lord. But in the future, the suffering servant, Yeshua, would be referred to as that, the suffering Messiah. And from David, we'll have a conquering Messiah that will come from the line of Judah. There's a branch of Judaism today that considers Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson to be the Messiah, although not all of them do, but many of them do. Throughout the scriptures, many men have been seen as messiahs or saviors, but they have never been put in the place of God. Noah saved humanity from the flood, but no one has ever considered him God. Others have healed the sick and even raised the dead, like Elijah, yet he was not considered God. The word Mashiach means anointed. They would use oil to anoint for a specific purpose. They had a role. Many ceremonial anointments took place, including at the temple, at the tent of meeting, and later in the temple, and all their instruments of worship were anointed. Priests and kings were anointed, the word Mashiach, for their roles, but none were considered Yud He Vav He, the Creator God. Here the stage is set for the understanding that we have today about these two men. Joseph was not recognized by his brothers for several reasons. He was clean-shaven, unlike the Hebrews. He wore the garments of a foreigner. He spoke a foreign language, even using an interpreter to speak to his brothers. Even his name was changed from Joseph to Zaphnat Paneach. Pharaoh was considered a god to the Egyptians. So Joseph was looked upon as the Son of God. The idea of Jesus being the Son of God didn't begin with the Greeks or the Romans. It began here. Although Joseph was a Hebrew, the Gentile world bowed down to him, just as they bowed down today before Jesus, also a Hebrew. Despite living in a totally foreign environment, Joseph never converted to the religion of Egypt. On the contrary, his loyalty to the God of his fathers remained intact. In fact, we still pray every Shabbat that our sons would be like his sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Yeshua's sermons always referred to his people. Yeshua's sermon always referred his people back to the written Torah. And we can be grateful to whoever wrote down his words, as well as those of his Talmidim, his students, so that we could get a glimpse of his life. But can we today trust the veracity of words written years after their deaths by people who could neither understand the Torah and the Hebrew culture, or who perhaps had another agenda? Even Rav Shaul, known today as Paul, he was a student of Gamaliel and Rabbi Yeshua. he would never have strayed from the Torah, as he has been so unjustly accused of doing. He would never have created a new religion with another God. And one day, justice will come for Rav Shaul, whose name was also changed to Paul by foreigners. You know, our own Rabbi Percy, his name was changed when he lived in a foreign land. All of us who are born Jews have a name from the land that we're living in, but we also have a Hebrew name, or in some cases a Yiddish name. Rabbi Percy's name was Netanel. He taught us a rule of thumb for understanding any later writings, any writings after the Torah. He would say, whenever their words went against the Torah, we can understand, we can surmise that they had been changed over time. Now, these two giants, Joseph and Judah, were leaders in their own right. Judah demonstrated that he was responsible as a leader despite his many mistakes. The Torah teaches us that our biblical heroes were human, and they could commit mistakes. They could commit sin. Yet we see that once they had a change of heart, the Creator would call upon them to fulfill their special role, as he does with us today. Although they were not all equal in power and authority by human understanding, they were equal in the sight of God. Joseph had not yet revealed himself to his brothers and was quite harsh in his treatment of them because of what they had done to him. He was testing them to see if they had changed. Although 22 years had passed, and he was now the most powerful man in Egypt next to Pharaoh, he still would have felt the pain of their betrayal. He said that he would keep Benjamin as his slave, but Judah had promised his father Jacob that he would be responsible for Benjamin at any cost, and offered his own life in place of Benjamin. Now this helped change Joseph's mind, allowing him to let go of his desire for revenge and heal the pain of the past. Joseph saw that his brothers were united and repentant. And this message is a projection of what will happen in the future. Israel can only take its place as a leader of all the nations under God when all our people finally recognize their wrongdoings, when they unite and return due to teshuvah to the Creator, not to religion, to the Creator God. In the Haftarah portion, in Ezekiel 37, it speaks of these two branches, these two sticks, Joseph and Judah. Joseph through his son Ephraim. They would unite one day. Such a beautiful Haftarah portion. When and how did Joseph finally get recognized? He knew who his brothers were, but they didn't know him. Joseph finally revealed himself to them after he had tested them and saw their change of heart. Joseph himself had to be tested and humbled, or he would never have been able to fulfill his role. He cried out to his brothers, Ani Yosef, I am Joseph, whom you sold into slavery. And then he told them, don't worry, for what you meant for evil, God has used for good to save your lives. He understood in that moment what the Creator had done with him. We're comparing Joseph with Judah, but also Joseph with Yeshua. So why is this comparison of Joseph and Yeshua so meaningful? Joseph was a top-ranking official next to Pharaoh alone, and he was placed in a position to save lives. Yeshua's role was to bring our people back to the Torah of Moses, the written Torah, which is a book of life-saving principles, in order for them to fulfill their role of being Or Goyim, light to the nations. Our Rabbi Netanel believed that we are nearing the day when Israel would lead all the nations to the God of our fathers, as it says in Zechariah 8:23. Thus says Adonai Tzevaot, the God of the armies, in those days 10 people from the nations of every tongue will take hold of one Jew by the corner of his cloak and say, let us go with you, because we have heard that God is with you. Let's not continue the myth that there is a separate God for them and us. Being Jewish or being part of Israel has nothing to do with bloodline. It has to do with having a genuine relationship with the God of Israel, for both Jew and Gentile. This is depicted in the lives of Joshua and Caleb, the only two men from that first generation of slaves who left Egypt for the Promised Land. Joshua was an Israelite, and Caleb was a Kenizzite, a Gentile, the stranger among us. What a beautiful message for the world. If we compare our Messiah Yeshua with Jesus Christ, or as some say, Jesus of the Christ, it's obvious that they are not the same. Rabbi Yeshua is a historical figure, while Christ is a theological construct originating in ancient Rome. How can the descendants of Judah recognize Jesus Christ as their brother when he doesn't speak their language? He was dressed in foreign garb, foreign clothes, and is worshipped as a god. Yehudim, Jews, cling to the Shema. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. There's only one God for Jew and Gentile. This is our contention and the reason we cannot worship him as God. Yeshua ben Yosef began his service solely to Israel. He said that he didn't come for the Gentiles. He came for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. His struggle was not with the general populace of Israel. In fact, they flocked to him by the thousands to hear his teachings. His problem was with some of the Pharisees, not all. Remember, Nicodemus was a Pharisee. His problem was with those who imposed such heavy burdens upon their people that they themselves weren't willing to carry, and they sided with the wealthy and the powerful element of Rome. We can compare them with some factions today that side with the so-called Palestinians against the state and the people of Israel. Many are grateful to have the U.S. president who is standing with Israel when so many other nations are condemning and betraying us, accusing Israel of being an apartheid, racist, and terrorist nation, when the opposite is true. On the other hand, sadly, like at the time they called for their first king, like the time they called for their first king, Saul, they wanted a king. They weren't happy to have God as their king. But today, the people of Israel still choose to be like the other nations. And today, they have allowed the promised land, we have allowed the promised land to become polluted with every ideology from super religiosity to super atheism and everything in between. We have lost our compass because we no longer allow God's Torah to lead the way. We have replaced it with man's rules and regulations. We have forgotten our God. and our purpose to be Or L'Goyim. Why is it important for Yeshua to be part of our heritage along with our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses? Judah approached Joseph. Joseph, second only to Pharaoh, the god of Egypt, was considered the son of God. It wasn't until Joseph approached his brothers in an intimate way that they understood who he was. You know what this brought to my mind? I thought of Moses approaching the burning bush. He was drawn to its light, and after that, his calling was revealed. Many of us, Jews and Gentiles, have been drawn to the light through the persona of Jesus. And we wonder why, if he's considered a false god. Just as the burning bush was not God, Jesus was not God. He was like Joseph, unrecognizable to his Hebrew brothers. But the Hebrew Yeshua, descended from the line of Judah, had the light of God burning in him, as it does in all of us who are drawn to the light. You know, when I was immersed in the New Age, we were led to believe that we were the light and that our responsibility was to spread our light to heal the world. What a heavy burden that was. When I first read the book of John, Yochanan, that burden was lifted off my shoulders. John 1 says, "A man came sent by God. His name was John or Yochanan. He came to bear witness to the light, so that everyone might believe through him. He was not the light. The Torah was the true light that gives light to everyone." You know, Rabbi Yeshua told us in Matthew 5:15, "Nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a barrel or a basket, but they put it on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house." Perhaps that's why those of us who have a relationship with God are drawn to Yeshua's light. His words expanded and explained the Torah. In Matthew 5:16-18, Yeshua said, "In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works, your good deeds, and glorify your Father in heaven." He didn't say glorify me. Glorify our Father in heaven. And he continued, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the Torah or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them. I came to fulfill them. For I tell you truly, until heaven and earth pass away, not a single yud, not a vowel will disappear from the Torah until everything is accomplished." What did he mean when he said he would fulfill them? He was saying that he would show us that he was the living example, that he was an example of how to live the Torah. And that's what we need to do. That's what we are in the process of doing, learning to live the principles of the Torah. Living the Torah caused him to display that light. It does the same for all of us who are his students, his Talmidim. And now Judah. In the future, the Lion of Judah will rise, and Israel, along with the pharaohs of the world, all of them, will be drawn to the light. They will see the light, and they will come to know the true God, the King, the one and only King and Creator of the universe, Yud-He Vav-He. So, anybody have any opinions about what we heard today, what you heard today?
A lot of real meat in this study, really good. Um, Comparing Judah and Joseph to to Yeshua, etc., etc. Because as I've been telling you, I've been really like I look over my own personal experience, and Yeshua was such a strong before I came to the congregation, I always had trouble with the idea, two things, that he was God. And what does that mean? What does nobody he's when he's here, he's a man. What does that whole thing mean? And the idea that through his death, my sins were forgiven. That I just couldn't grasp that. But yet there was something about him that nothing ever affected me that way. So that's why I've always wrestled, like, who was he? He's not, I mean, yes, even Moses was incredibly special, but the kind of effect that Yeshua had, and I can't say it's from people's experiences, blah, blah, blah. I grew up in an atheist Jewish home. We were secular Jews, and culturally, I was very Jewish. Yes, so things were very important. It was very important, the Jewishness of my life. But I can't say I grew up in a secular Christian home where the name of Jesus was always spoken about. So my experience was it was very unique.
Yeah.
And I still wrestle a little bit. Was he somehow the last prophet that had maybe even more of God's, whatever that means? You can't measure it, but I've always wrestled with that. But I'm seeing more clearly that when you compare him, the burning bush isn't God, but it's the light of God.
Well, imagine if we go up on to Mount Royal here and all of a sudden we see a bush burning and burning. We would be so drawn to it. We would go like Moses was drawn to this light. And that because we were talking about that, and that kind of gave me a little bit of better perspective because I too, I prayed to have Jesus come into my heart. I didn't know what that meant, but I do know that something dramatic happened to me after that. But was it because of Jesus or was it because of God? Now, that's been our struggle. I remember the first time Rabbi Percy told us, he said, he is not he didn't save our lives. Only God could save our lives. And then I thought, well, if he didn't bring salvation, what hope is there? How am I going to get saved? But the salvation in Judaism is a completely different thing than Christianity, and a concept that was developed over the years out of the Roman Empire, out of that whole period. I don't have the full history of it, but for us, being saved is a very physical thing, and turning back to God is what we need to do.
But
Not
you could say that's the true salvation. If you want to take it out of the Christian context, God did save my life.
he saved
I
mine
think I
too.
might have been dead or in an asylum.
Me
So,
too.
so
Absolutely. Yeah.
but,
That's what
but
I mean. It's very physical. It's not that we're being saved and all going to heaven. And if you don't believe in him, you're not saved, you're going to hell. Because
no,
that's
but
what
your
people
life is
believe.
saved it's totally transformed, you
That's
know.
physical. The physicality here has nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
Not, yeah, it's very different from the Christian concept.
But also the concept, I even speaking a little bit to Steve. I'm not sure exactly how he believes, but he was coming out with some of these. You know how Steve is a brilliant thinker. He's
Yeah,
but then when he come out with certain cliche, not even cliche, but stock Christian answers, and I said,
right.
Steve, what does that mean? But um, what was I going to say? It's not about salvation in the Christian sense, as you
Yeah,
say. It's much bigger than that.
yeah.
But there is some, there is something that happens, and the idea. Okay, this is the thing that really I find really hard to accept. The idea that people who don't follow something in exactly a certain way is going to go to hell. Because even amongst us, we have many differences, but the thing we have in common is one thing. the relationship with the creator of the universe. There might
Exactly.
be certain idiosyncrasies or certain ways we believe that are different, but in the idea that only through one little way, no matter what your heart is, God measures your heart and your intentions, you're going to hell. That was the biggest turnoff for me. So,
But
uh,
it's interesting because people have said that to me. I said to them, "You mean one day I believed that Jesus is God? I believed in the Trinity, so I'm going to heaven. The next day, I didn't believe it anymore, and you say that no one can lose their salvation, but the next day I didn't believe anymore in that. I don't believe in Yeshua, but I love his teachings. That means I'm going to hell." And they just said yes.
although some would say with all, and even this I found ridiculous, but not ridiculous. I don't want to put down another, I don't mean it that way. Um, but it's not that suddenly the next day you're saved or you're not saved, but you were never really in relationship. That's what I was told. I said, how could it be? Yesterday I didn't believe this, and now this way, today, the next day. And they say, well, the fullness of it you didn't really have. You didn't really, whatever it is. And the only way I could sort of think about it is if when they say no one could come to the Father but through me. Okay, there might be some truth if you look at it a certain way. A lot of us were brought to God through him. So it
And
might
what,
be
but him as a person,
as a person, not as a
or yeah,
God.
but how are you brought to something? I mean, here he was teaching the Torah. He was standing there speaking on, when he did the Sermon on the Mount, he was speaking to thousands and thousands of people. So were we drawn by him or the things that he was teaching us the Torah? If you look at,
No, I know.
we read the Torah on Tuesday evenings, and we get excited about these words. They're marvelous. They're life-giving words. So, be careful when we think we're being drawn by a person. We're being drawn by God
Well, no,
through the
ultimately by
person.
God, but yeah, I know what you're saying. It's everything is by God. It's true. But he was such I don't know, a presence. That's why I just have to
Well,
accept.
if we were going to meet Moses today, or we're going to meet Elijah who raised people from the dead, you don't think we would
Yeah,
think
it's
that?
true.
I mean, here, Noah. Noah was a man who literally saved humanity, but he wasn't God.
No, no, for sure. That's another thing.
And each of us in our lives, there's something that people see in us. We don't always don't we always we don't always know what is. I see it when I sing for someone with Alzheimer's and I get close to them and I look in their eyes and I'm able to reach them. It's not me. There's something in within us that's inexplicable.
It's interesting because even a dog will see it. Remember
Even
with
adult, yes.
remember Mansour's dog?
Yeah, that
I was
huge dog.
terrified. It was the size of a tiger. It was huge, and you weren't afraid at all. And it came right up to you like a puppy.
I
But it
should have,
saw something because the
yeah.
opposite is true too. Animals will see darkness in you. I've seen that many times.
Wow, amazing. Yeah. Mauricio, you always have wonderful things to add. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say, my friend.
Okay, thank you first uh, for the teaching today, because you are giving us an idea about the two Mashiach and the unification of the kingdom of Israel. Um, and honestly, since I I changed my mind from Christianity to Judaism, I've been dealing with the idea of Messiah, honestly. Okay. And this is not something that I would like that you take as a teaching. It's a kind of thinking, uh, like criticism, okay? Uh, because well, the idea, the hope of Mashiach, honestly, is when you look from far, okay, not inside, obviously. Uh, there is an idea of what is Mashiach and why is needed. Um, and in this parasha, we can see the reunion of the brothers, okay, and then they gather together to become one nation, okay. And this is the climax of the of Bereshit, okay, because God started a garden for a man, for the whole humanity, okay, and in his desire is that the final, I would say, main objective of man was family, okay,
Yes.
and we can see that the tikkun of Bereshit, how it ends, is with the meeting of the family. Okay. Prior this, we can see all the families in the earth had problems. Okay.
Right.
God spoke to one person. Okay. Like Noah, like Abraham, like Sarai, like Isaac, Jacob, etc. But until the end, we can see the gathering all people as one family. Okay, one kind of thinking. It's interesting that ends the Bereshit saying that 70 soul is not souls because it's nefesh.
Oh,
Okay,
interesting. Wow.
no nefeshot. Okay, it's nefesh go down to Egypt. Okay. So this is like a tikkun. Okay. This is God is making a purpose in this sense, in this idea. Israel is like I don't know how to say that. How do you say in English Pharaoh? Pharaoh is the
Like the
when you are
king?
mm, is a lighting in the ocean, okay, to to avoid the ships
Oh, yes.
goes to rocks, okay.
Yes, yes. Okay.
Is a light, okay.
Right.
So
A
Israel is
beacon.
like
A
that,
beacon.
beacon, okay.
Yeah.
So Israel is like that, okay, to the world, okay, is showing the way,
The
okay,
Right.
lighthouse.
and the
Yes.
lighthouse, okay.
Yes. Right. Thank you, Brian.
Okay. So that is like the purpose of Israel. So right now is God is giving the model so or the pattern to be so people can follow, okay,
Right.
or the humanity, okay.
Right.
So in this case, it's interesting that right now Joseph is hidden like brother, okay, and it's interesting that start this portion with Judah, the one who sold him, okay. But Yigash, he gets closer,
Right.
okay. He approach, okay,
Right.
to Joseph,
Yes.
okay. Eh, so uh, in Israel or the family also, one nefesh won't be able if Judah and Joseph do not come together. Okay, they get close. They establish the relationship. Okay, but and then the idea comes after David. Okay, of a Mashiach, and it's interesting that the Torah calls, for example, Cyrus as Mashiach.
Right. That's why I said there were many. Because
Yeah,
the whole idea of a Mashiach, like, and when I see people saying we're waiting for the Messiah, I say, yeah, but what are you going to do while you're waiting? We need to make changes in our own lives.
yeah.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I have some problems to accept the idea of Mashiach.
Me
Okay,
too. Me too.
because
Yeah,
honestly, we don't need a Mashiach to
exactly.
do the right things. Okay,
Yes, exactly.
as well as we do not need a temple to worship God.
Right. You know, it's
Okay.
interesting you're saying that because while I was writing it, that little idea kept flashing in my brain and I wasn't looking at it. So I'm really glad you're bringing this out because I do the same thing. I don't even like to sing the Mashiach song anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't need it.
So,
Exactly.
but at the end, it is like, okay, what is the idea of Mashiach? Honestly, okay. First is an idea. Okay.
Yes. After, and look, it developed after the Maccabees. It wasn't there
Yeah.
before.
Yeah. And then also is like a hope, like a nation. We need a hope. We need that someone, but on the time during the whole years, different branches of Judaism start to put different ingredients about what is and what is not Mashiach.
Right.
And every time is so difficult that that one person or one group can the whole checklist they put, okay,
Yeah.
they can say, oh, this is yes, 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 no, 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 yes.
Right.
So
Yeah.
as today, nobody could be Messiah, okay.
Exactly. Exactly.
Not if he's not God, because honestly, I mean, um and I was dealing with that idea because even a Mashiach, supposedly God sends a man, okay, today. Oh, this is the Mashiach. I was reading, and it's interesting how people can be so dummy. Okay, sorry to say that, but for example, right now there is a Nigerian man prophet, Aval or something like that is his name. He started to build a Noah ark. Okay,
No.
because and he dressed like Noah,
Oh,
honestly.
in
Sorry,
Nigeria?
where is he?
In
In
Nigeria,
Nigeria.
yes,
Nigeria,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, and people is following him,
Oh,
and he said on December 25th, 2025, there will be a flood. Okay, and people gave a lot of money,
yeah, of
and
course.
he was filmed just recently going into a supermarket in his Mercedes Benz, thanks for all the money given to him. Okay, and now he said, "No, God repent," and said, "We will wait a little bit more." So
Oh,
probably he needs
well,
more money.
there was a flood in California.
Yeah, as well as Gaza, and and when you see that there's so many deceivers,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
and also could be someone who can be like Yeshua, to be a Mashiach, okay, and but people, for example, one of the items they said, okay, no more war. Oh, okay, no more war, but that is external or internal, because no more war is a process, okay. For example, do you believe that Russians and
Ukrainians.
Ukrainians, after sign peace, okay, one day, next day they have peace between both nations? No, probably takes more than 100 years. Okay. Eh, Even today, for example, Latin America deals with Spain about something that happened 500 years ago. Okay, there is no peace, honestly. So thinking that one man in one day can bring peace to the whole world and no more war, in one day, it's impossible. Okay.
Yes.
So that is things that made me think about isn't too much the idea of Mashiach today.
Mm.
And you know, during the process when Yeshua born, is very interesting that there were different groups. Okay, one was the Sadducees, for example, the Sadiqim.
Right.
They were not against Rome because they have money. Okay, they have political power. Okay,
Right.
so they were not agree with the idea of a Mashiach.
Right.
Okay, the Perushin is the idea that we have today about what is a Messiah. Okay,
Right.
so and then you have the Zelots, for example, and the
Right.
Essenes
Right.
that also they have different way of thinking about what is Mashiach, and obviously people, common people, have different idea of
Sure.
what is Mashiach.
Sure.
So so eh, the point is, for example, they said, the Mashiach will restore that third temple. And I've been asking to myself, honestly, who said that God needs a temple?
Exactly. And what are we going to do? Go back to the sacrificial system? Those poor animals?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
Remember you
crazy.
said, Peggy, or was it you? Anyway, maybe the rabbi, we're talking about the dimensions that are
Yeah.
supposedly,
In
they are
Ezekiel,
so
much bigger. Yeah.
huge that it couldn't be a literal physical temple.
Yeah.
yeah. So today is not something sustainable,
Right.
okay, to have the idea of sacrifice at the temple.
Right.
Can you imagine how many cows or goats we need to kill every day?
Crazy. Yeah.
That would be crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also, instead to approach people to God, people will get very far from the God of Israel,
Even
because
further.
God, yeah, even further, yeah,
Yeah.
because it's not the idea that today, honestly, people would like to approach to the God of Israel who kills animals.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. We'll have all the animal rights groups outside the temple. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so that's the idea that
Yeah.
honestly, in some way, I'm a great idea to have Mashiach for my generation, and I can and I can have the hope of giving a Mashiach that is coming, but at the same time is something that I dealing with, okay, because is God's purpose to have a Mashiach. So and the other thing is that we as human trying to make gods according to our own image.
Exactly.
And what I see during the several years is when there is a leader who follows God, who fears God, people trying to make him God, like Yeshua, for example,
Right.
okay, like Menachem
Yes.
Nerson, in another many leaders,
Right.
spiritual leaders,
Right.
okay. So uh, so that is something that we have to deal. But today, what I'm very sure that the Torah is teaching us is, okay, fear God, love your neighbor, love God, follow the Torah, the principle of the Torah, the Ten Commandments, uh, and, 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 and if God wants to send us a Mashiach, that would be very nice and great, but it's not our last hope. Okay.
No. No. That's a beautiful message, Mauricio. Thank you. And it's very true. I really have struggled with this whole idea of Mashiach because people say, well, do you believe, they ask me, do you believe that Jesus is coming back again? I said, how would I know such a thing? You know, they say, well, he'll be son of David. He will be. But it's like we can't know what God is going to do. We have little bit of a hint in the prophets, you know, things that are a future time. When I went to like a little service that we had lighting the lights of Hanukkah, they started because it's a Lubavitch rabbi. He starts singing Mashiach, 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 and you know we want Mashiach now, and yet they do they not realize that toward the end, when the birth pangs are heavier and heavier and heavier on the world, that it's just going to get worse and worse for our people? You know, the closer is to the end, I, you know, all these ideas are, these concepts were created by us, by man. We don't know what God is going to do. Not 100%. We have pictures and ideas of what will happen, but all we have is today. You know, if we want to make a difference in the life of our family and our children or the people around us, we have to change ourselves, or we have to ask God to help us change ourselves. If we want to live in a world of peace, we have to live righteous lives, lives according to the Torah. That's, for me, is the only way. And we're going to make mistakes. Like none of our heroes are were superhuman, and so there's so many things we have to learn from this. You know, in a way now this the message that I gave, I'm not sure I gave the right message at all, because sometimes I say things from what I've learned and don't don't continue it, don't finish it. That's why I'm so grateful for you, Mauricio. You helped me to do that. Like I put a few of these ideas in the message for us to think about, because I know Miriam and I have been thinking about that. Why were we drawn to Jesus? What drew us? That's when the idea of the burning bush came to my life, came to my mind. We're drawn by the light, and the light is Torah. And what are we called? To be Or Lagoyim, light to the nations. That was our that was the only reason God created a nation, because we were, all the world was pagan, and he had to get us away from that. I mean, really the message is not a complicated one, but we have made it so complicated. So that was beautiful. Thank you, Mauricio, again. Are there any other anything else that anybody wants to say before we finish for this day and enjoy the rest of Shabbat? Mauricio, you're bringing the message next week. It's your turn, I think.
Oh, is my turn?
Yeah, I think so. Last week, well, oh no, it's Rabbi's turn. Last week you was yours. No, it's Rabbi's. Yes, you got scared. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you everybody for joining our service today. Take off the rest of the Shabbat and relax and enjoy. And remember, God gave it to us as a sign of his existence. And we can be so grateful for what he's teaching us. So have a wonderful Shabbat. And
Shabbat
we'll
shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Oh,
Shabbat Shalom.
bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.